Not bad, huh? Welcome back to the series on the history of running and running shoes. To recap, before there were running shoes, there had to be running. Until 1960, running was predominantly done on the track, being workouts hard every single day. At the 1960 Olympics, the world of running discovered Arthur Lydiard, who was coaching successful athletes by having them do large volume at low intensities on trails and beaches. This was something everyone, including you and I, could do. Running shoes began to evolve. The 1970s brought us a new brand, Nike, and a great many events for us to express our newfound running. At the end of the decade, we saw a 66.3% increase in runners in 1 year at the Boston Marathon. In 1979, Boston had 7,927 runners, up from 4,764 in 1978 and 1,219 in 1972. The running boom was on. While Nike, Asics Tiger, and Adidas were gearing up for the 1980 Olympics, the other brands were really just getting started. The 1980 Olympics were going to be a showdown between American Steve Scott and the Brits, Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett. Steve, a lifelong Asics Tiger athlete, was raring to go. That year, Nike introduced the Mariah at the 1980 Olympic marathon trials. And Adidas launched the marathon. Unfortunately, we never got to see Scott in his prime on the Olympic stage. The United States would boycott the Moscow Olympics because of the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, depriving Steve and the rest of the Team USA from competing. I've gotten to know Steve really well, and you'd never know how disappointed he was at that time. He's such a humble guy. And I will tell you, that man can still turn those feet over. I once had a coach who allowed me to pay him in running shoes. And his shoe of choice, the Adidas Marathon. My favorite quote from him is, "That shoe started to feel good after 2,000 miles of running." The future version of the Mariah, the Air Mariah, was one of my favorite racing flats of all time. The most significant shoe release in 1981 was the Terra Tc from Nike. It had a new midsole. Apparently the designer was playing with his son's or daughter's toys and realized, whoa, these things are soft. This would make a great running shoe midsole. And sure enough, Nike created Phylon, which was the first compression molded EVA midsole. Remember what I said? Ethyl vinyl acetate is the foam that's still used today. When the Villanova came out, it was sheets that were cut out like a cookie cutter. But Nike developed compression molded, where the foam is injected into a mold. That Terra Tc was light and it was soft and people loved it. It was everywhere on runners. It was very rare that you saw a runner and they weren't wearing the Terra Tc. That same year, the Saucony Jazz came out. It won awards from Runner's World, But what's important about the jazz, is that years later, an execution of the jazz would save Saucony from total collapse. 1981 was also the year I started running. My brother had started running the year before, so I knew about running from him. But he was in college, and so I didn't see him very often. But it was a girl. Of course it was. It was a girl that really got me into running because she ran cross country. That December, my brother was home from school. We went out for a run, and I remember it distinctly. The temperature was hovering around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. There was snow all over. I had my New Balance running shoes on, my first pair of real running shoes, and I had socks on my hands for gloves. It was so cold. But we were running along, and my brother started talking about how cool it would be to work for Nike. And I said, oh, that would be really cool, but I would rather work for New Balance. Also in 1981, because of some poor management decisions, Brooks filed for bankruptcy. While Nike and Adidas were working on performance, working on the front pack of runners with racing flats and doing very lightweight shoes like the Terra Tc, Brooks and Asics Tiger started to capitalize on stabilizing the foot. And so in 1982, Brooks launched the Chariot, and Asics launched the Excalibur. The following year, Nike releases the #1 selling running shoe of all time. There's nothing that even comes close. The Air Pegasus. It had a polyurethane heel, a Phylon forefoot, Nike Air in the heel, and it was durable. In fact, most running shoes those days had 5 millimeters of solid rubber in the heel for durability, and a solid rubber forefoot. In 1984, the Los Angeles Olympics took place, and significant in those Olympics, although there were lots of things that were significant, probably the most popular American runner of all time won the first ever women's Olympic marathon, and her name was Joan Benoit. In second place was the most prolific marathoner we have ever had, Greta Vytes. Greta would win 9 New York City marathons, 2 London marathons, the 1983 Marathon World Championships. She would also win 5 cross-country world championships. There isn't anybody in running that matches that. Also important in 1984, at least to me, I bought my second pair of real running shoes, the Nike Terra Trainer. That's right, those New Balance shoes that I bought lasted me from the summer of 1981 all the way to 1984. I wore straight down to the midsole. That's all there was. There was no rubber left on those shoes. Oh, those were the days. Thanks for watching. For more on the history of running and running shoes, watch the 3 previous videos. Next week, I'm going to cover roughly 1985 to 1990. Like last week, I'll ask you to wave and smile at the next runner you see. Spread your love of running. Do it as often as you can. We all could use a little bit of running love right now. Thanks a lot for watching.